Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the Stogie Review video review. I am Walt White, and we're back once again after IPCPR in New Orleans has concluded, and it's time to get back into business doing cigar reviews like we normally do. And first cigar I have for you is one that I picked up at the trade show, and it is entitled We the People. It is an Ecuadorian Connecticut shade wrapped cigar. The binder is Ecuadorian, filler is Nicaraguan. And at the trade show was the first time I've ever heard about this brand, or had even seen the brand before. And it was in Willie Herrera's booth for El Titan de Bronze. As it turns out, Willie does this house brand or house blend for this company, We the People, which is I think it's a subsidiary of Bidwell Cigar. So Willie introduces me to the general manager. I get to talking to her a little bit, and I get some samples handed to me, and a little bit of documentation, which isn't a whole lot, just this little leaflet thing that goes into a bag. And well, here we are. It's time to take a look at the first cigar of the trade show, and just sort of run down the specifics on this particular cigar. This is a Belicoso shape. It's 54 by 6.5. And the price point per box of 20 comes out to be $268. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, you know, that seems awfully high. You know, I wonder what that comes out to per single. And I just divided that price up by 20, and I got like 13 bucks, which is very surprising for a brand that I've never heard of before. But we'll just have to give it the benefit of the doubt and smoke it and see how it goes. But I'm already very turned off by the price point. You know, and on Stogie Review we've mentioned before where we find it very difficult to accept some of these price points when we've never heard of the cigar before. For instance, you know, when we were first introduced to Bravo cigar, you know, it was a $7 cigar. It was a brand we'd never heard of before, and I think it started at $7 and went up. There was another one after that I think Jerry and I both smoked. It was, you know, $7 to $8 and went up from there. And while those were more comfortable than it was like $13.40 or something like that. But for a brand I've never heard of before, that seems very high. But we'll see if it smokes like a $14 cigar. So, four sizes are available. There's Corona Busto, which is new for this company, and actually has a little trademark symbol next to it. That's 44 by 4.5. There's a Robusto, 52 by 5. Belicoso, this one, 54 by 6.5, and a Churchill, which is a 50 by 7.5. All of them are packaged in boxes of 20, and all of these cigars are made in Little Havana, down in Miami, at the El Titan de Bronze shop. So actually that's probably where a lot of the cost comes from. Cigar actually being made in Miami rather than Nicaragua, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, wherever you may want to go with it. So let's get this thing started. Just giving it I want to give it a quick once over and just give it a little pinch. It feels nice and packed. I've got a little bit of a soft spot right here. But aside from that, it feels uniformly packed. It doesn't feel overly tight. The rolling style on this is entubado, which is basically tubes that end up getting put together and then pressed into shape. It makes up a more dense cigar than simply just, I forget what the name of it is, but it's almost like rolling it up like an accordion where you're just sort of folding and folding and folding and making a bunch of pleats. This is actually tubes that make up the cigar rather than those pleats. And when you put this in the press and start squeezing it, it ends up compressing all those tubes, and it makes a very dense filler. I've got a little bit of an ugly spot on the back of the cigar. It's kind of greenish. It looks just like a water spot, but it almost looks like it goes completely through the first wrap of leaf. Let me show you that. You can see it there. There's two of them. It's just kind of ugly, but I really don't suspect it is going to give me any issues. So we'll see what happens. Just like any other Connecticut, it's got a little bit of a lumpy appearance and texture toward the veins. It's got a nice oily sheen to it, and it looks neatly made. So let's go ahead and get this cut and lit. The draw is very free, and actually when I cut the cigar, I almost pinched the whole cigar in half. The end feels pretty soft, and the cutter just sort of pinched it over, which is a little surprising. The draw is very loose, and I'm not really getting any pre-light flavor out of it. Maybe a little bit of sweetness, like a cedary flavor, but that's about it. So let's go ahead and get this started. Now, if you watched the video on this cigar that we did from the trade show, these cigars are aged and packaged on beds of cedar, which is kind of interesting. It's not your standard piece of cedar veneer stuffed in a box. From the looks of the box at the trade show, it appeared as though they were like cedar shavings that the cigars were laid on top of. Now, when they're in the box, they're on top of the cedar inside of cellophane sleeves. But I'm assuming when they're aged and whatnot, this is all pre-cellophane, so I wouldn't be surprised if there were a lot of cedar flavors in the cigar. But we'll see. Well, I've got my cigar lit. It's got a lot of bite to it. Heavy through the sinuses. This is actually my first cigar of the day, and I'm going to be pairing it with some Black Dog coffee. So hang tight. I'm going to take my first break. I'll come back. We'll take a look at the first third of the We the People, and we'll see how she goes. So sit tight. Alright, well, welcome back. It's been just about 40 minutes now, and I'm still plugging right along on my We the People Belicoso. Now, let's see if I can show you the burn line. Burn line's kind of thick in most spots, and it's pretty wavy, and the ash is ugly, and to add more fuel to the fire, I'm finding myself getting really irritated with this cigar, primarily at the ash. As you know, if you've seen these reviews before, I take a lot of pictures throughout the course of the review. I have an ashtray full of ash that I use as my everyday ashtray, and I have another ashtray set up in a makeshift light tent so that I can take pictures of the cigar as I go along. They're not far away from one another, 2.5 feet maybe, but I pick up the cigar, and just the movement did it again. Just from the movement of picking up the cigar and shifting in my seat to put the cigar in the ashtray, I've got ash falling all over the place. Now, it's not big clumps of ash, but it's that light, airy, soft ash that sort of just floats off the cigar and gets everywhere. It's not holding very tight and compact. It's got a very flowered sort of appearance to it. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if stuff started falling off the cigar, just waving it around a little bit. But it seems like every time I put it down, you know, I do something, whether it's make a note or type up a quick sentence, I pick up the cigar and I've got stuff falling both in the ashtray, on the table, in my lap. Again, I haven't had big clumps of ash fall, but it's lots and lots of little pieces that are kind of annoying me. Before I lit the cigar, I mentioned that the pre-light draw was a little loose. It's still a little loose, but it's doing a good job of providing a good supply of smoke. I don't feel as though I'm being robbed. You know, I'm getting a nice, dense supply of smoke. It's not too airy. Easy to get through the sinuses, nice and thick. And the burn rate seems pretty good too. For as loose as it is, the cigar seems to be burning nice and slow. As I mentioned, I've got notes that are saying I'm about 40 minutes in, and you know, I'm just now getting into the second third of the cigar. In the flavor department, I'm getting primarily cedar, and that cedar comes in a wave. After you take the puff, you let the smoke expel from your mouth, and there's a wave of this cedar flavor. which is kind of nice. A little sweet, but primarily cedar. It hangs around for not very long, 30 seconds or so, and then it diminishes, and you're left with sort of a clean, crisp sort of flavor or feeling. Through the sinuses, it's primarily like a spicy punch. It's crisp and clean, and in the flavor department, the cigar is doing very well. I don't know whether I mentioned it to you or not, but there's a line in this little pamphlet or leaflet that I thought was kind of strange and a little confusing, and that would definitely be confusing for a lot of people. And it goes on to say, and I quote, "This is one of the most full-bodied mild cigars of its kind on the market." And when I first read that, I thought, this is kind of confusing. A lot of people are going to be confused by this. I understand where they're going, but I think it's going to be confusing to a lot of people. And after having smoked the cigar for a little bit, I can definitely see where that line comes from. It's got a heavy, spicy punch. There's definitely some strength when you retrohale the smoke, getting it through your sinuses. And it's got the characteristics of a full-bodied cigar in that sense. But in terms of body or in mouthfeel, there's very little. I mean, there's just a minute, creamy sort of texture. Just reminds me of a very light, mild-bodied cigar in terms of that mouthfeel. But the spicy punch that you get through the sinuses is reminiscent of a mild cigar, or a full-bodied cigar. I'm sorry. And smoking the cigar, the absolute first thing that came to my mind after that first puff or two was the 601. I guess it's a black label. There's an Ecuadorian wrapped Connecticut. It's a 601 product made by EO Brands, and I was really reminded of that cigar, minus the bulk of the cedar flavor that you get out of this cigar. Now that one had very similar characteristics in terms of it having a milder mouthfeel, but a heavier punch through the sinuses. Just a little bit more on the body, since I'm glancing down at my notes. When I mentioned that wave of cedar coming on, it's kind of interesting where it hits the tongue. That cedar primarily hits the back of my tongue, and I get sort of a dry sensation out of it. But at the same time, when the front half of my tongue, it's mildly creamy and not nearly as dry. So it's kind of interesting, the dynamic that's going on. It seems fairly complex. There's a lot of interesting things going on, but I'm still struggling to get over that price point of about 14 bucks. At least, if I'm correct, and the math adds up from this leaflet that I was told to do, and you divide that out by number of cigars in the box, just the $13.40 just seems way high. But we'll keep smoking, and I don't know, see if my opinion changed. Maybe the cigar develops into just something phenomenal, and by the end, maybe I'll think that 14 bucks is a steal. But we have a long way to go yet. So sit tight. I'll be back. We'll take a look at the second third of my We the People, and we'll see how it goes. That piqued my interest again. Cigars just kind of gotten a little mundane, a little boring, and I'm really hoping that there's some sort of transition along the way. I'm still getting a primary Spanish cedar flavor. There's a little bit of a buttery flavor in there, but it's very mild. There's almost like a bready, toasty kind of flavor in there as well. Through the sinuses, I'm still getting that heavy punch, which I'm assuming is the Nicaraguan tobacco in the cigar. It's crisp and clean and very enjoyable. It's one of the things I like in cigars the most is when you retrohale the smoke, get it through your sinuses, and it's got a very crisp and clean sort of sensation to it. And in this case, I do have that crisp and clean sensation, and I'm enjoying it. The body is more or less the same. There's very little mouthfeel. It's very mild. I'm getting a mild dry sensation in the back of the tongue. The front portion is mildly creamy, and it still holds true to a full-bodied mild cigar. As confusing as that may sound, it actually makes sense when you smoke the cigar. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to touch on. There was, I guess, I was going to hold this off for later, but might as well just mention it now, and we'll just hope that you can remember it by the time the video comes to a conclusion, because there's a question I have to ask you. As I was packing up my gear at the El Titan the Bronze booth, I got to talking to Marcus, who is the president of Bidwell Cigar, and he was going to give me some samples, and he asked me, he said something along the lines of the Churchill was his favorite, was probably the best of what they had to offer, and he asked me, what do I think about smoking the Churchill? At that point in time, the first thought that went through my mind is, another Churchill? I can't smoke another Churchill. I'm getting so tired of smoking these larger cigars. And I told him, that would be fine if that's what he wanted to give me, but I don't prefer Churchills. So I'm curious of what your take on that is. Should I keep my mouth shut and take what they say is the best example of the line, or should I let my own opinion come through a little bit? If you've been watching these videos for a little while now, you know that I have a preference towards smaller cigars, and the larger cigars, I end up being very critical of them because I tend to get bored easily, and when I'm smoking a cigar for 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, in the case of these massive 60 ring gauge by 7-inch cigars, I tend to be really critical because I get bored and I've got nothing to do but critique them as I'm, twiddling my thumbs, puffing on a cigar. So in this case, I let my personal preference come through, and instead he recommended I try the Belicoso. Now, the Belicoso is still a little bit larger than what I normally smoke on a day-to-day basis, but it's manageable, and I don't mind that size cigar. So I have the Belicoso, and I'm smoking it, and for the most part enjoying it. I mean, I'm getting a little bored at this point, but my real question is, should I interject my own opinion and inform them of what my preferred size of choice is, my vitola of choice, or should I just hang back and just sort of grit my teeth and smoke those, massive giant Presidentes and whatever else may be the exceptional one of the line? So I'm curious as to what your opinion is. I'd love to hear it in the comments section. I'm going to take another break. I've got a little bit of cigar left to smoke. I'm going to pop the band off and see what the last third has in store for me. And I'll be back one more time. We'll wrap up the cigar, and then I'll let you be on your way. So sit tight. Be right back. Alright, well, I'm back, and it's about time to wrap up my We the People Belicoso. And you see, I've got a little bit more cigar left than I generally do at this point, and I don't think I'm going to be smoking it a whole lot longer. I'm still getting kind of frustrated by the ash. It's getting everywhere, and it's just a little bit annoying. The burn line is a little bit better. It's thinned out considerably. It's still wavy. The draw is still a little loose for my taste, and as a result the cigar is getting a little warm and it's getting quite bitter, and that bitterness is really putting a damper on the cigar for me. I'm not enjoying it nearly as much anymore. The flavor is more or less the same. I mean, the cigar's been very consistent, and while some people are going to love that, I tend to get bored with too much consistency. I'm all for a cigar that has a key flavor that really sets it apart from something else, and I find it very unique, and that flavor stays throughout. But I like other things to come in, to enter the picture and then leave along the way. That core flavor can stay there. It can even stay as the primary component. But I like other secondary flavors to come in and just grab my attention, make me think about the cigar a little bit more. This one's been just too consistent. It's just been a straight line from the start. Now, the Spanish cedar flavor has intensified. It's gotten a little more complex, a little richer, but it's just not enough to grasp my attention. It still holds true to that line in this leaflet that it's one of the most full-bodied mild cigars out there. It has qualities of a full-bodied cigar in the punch that it delivers through the sinuses, in the richness. I wouldn't call it full-bodied, mild-bodied cigar, or most full mild-bodied cigar. I would call it full-flavored mild-bodied cigar, but it's definitely mild in the sense that there's little mouthfeel. You're not getting that heavy, syrupy kind of texture that you get out of a really full-bodied cigar. It's very light, and it's almost got a sort of a clean sensation to it, very crisp and light. But it's got the power of a more full-flavored cigar, which is interesting. As I mentioned earlier, the first cigar that came to mind when I lit this one up was the 601 Black Label, the Ecuadorian wrapped Nicaraguan cigar by 601. Another cigar that comes to mind, immediately thinking of full-flavored mild cigars, is the Oliva Connecticut Reserve. Now, a lot of people will argue that that's not a mild cigar. It's just too full-flavored to be mild-bodied, but it's one of those ones that I consider on the cusp of between mild and medium as far as body is concerned, and it's very full-flavored. Now, given the choice, We the People, Oliva Connecticut Reserve, 601 Connecticut, which one would I choose? Well, I would choose either two 601 Connecticut's or two Oliva Connecticut Reserves over one We the People. And I don't want to get caught up on the price. I think this is overpriced. I'm not really happy with the price point. I think that it's going to turn a lot of people away from this cigar. And I really like to sort of look past the price point and analyze the cigar itself in these reviews, but the price is almost shocking. The fact that it's so much more than I would have expected. I would have expected $7-8, but when you divide out that price of $268 per box, you're coming up with between $13 and $14 per single, and I can't get past that. It's one of those things where you smoke the cigar and you think, well, this is kind of interesting, and then you hear the price point and you just think that can't be right. It's just too high. But the price point is what it is, and despite the price point, I don't think I'll be smoking very many more of these, simply because it's just too one-dimensional for my tastes. And not to get sort of hooked on this price point, but when you get up to $13, $14, $15, you're getting in Davidoff territory here. And while I'm not a huge fan of a lot of Davidoff products, there are some that I think are absolutely fantastic and worth every bit of their price point. And I really can't say the same for this one. This is my third, and I'm going to be smoking, I got 5. I'll be smoking the other 2 not long after this video is done, just to make sure that the first 3 that I smoked were on par as far as consistent within the line. And if anything changes, I'll be sure to drop a comment and let you know whether the last 2 were very different from the first 3, or if they were similar, or what the case may be. But that's my take on the We the People Belicoso. And I wish them the best of luck with their brand. I really like Willie Herrera and his El Titan de Bronze Redemption line. I think it's fantastic. And because of my relationship with Willie, I was really interested in checking out the cigar that he makes for Bidwell Cigar. So there you have it. Again, really appreciate you dropping a comment about the question I asked in the second third of this cigar review. And until next week, happy smoking.